say that we start a process in community or whatever, a communal process. The outcome, I think the beautiful part of a process like that, and it's not dissimilar from some of the processes I've used to at Cornerstone, and then other processes we've all been involved in different contexts. There's a desire in the process for there to be an outcome. We just don't presume to know what the outcome is going to be. So the outcome could look like a play where we all get on stage and we're talking to each other and we have feelings about each other, and it works out because we're acting, right?
That's real back.
That's, I think I'm getting back into acting because I'm so good at it.
Yeah.
But there is a desire for an outcome. So it could look like a play, could look more like a different kind of event, or the outcome could be the community coming to the conclusion that we don't want to do a play. We don't want to have an outcome. That would be the outcome of that process. That rarely happens. I can think of maybe one or two in my entire time doing even any kind of engaged work where the community is really ultimately, after even a relatively positive thing, just didn't make sense to have an outcome. But it could look like a lot. So some of the plays we've done or some of the projects we've done have not really looked like plays to a conventional theater goer at all. They've been, there's a word that people often misapply right now, in my opinion, where everybody uses the word immersive. We're doing immersive theater. It's immersive. But really, theater that's happening around and through a group of people when it's not even clear where the play begins and our interaction ends, kind of thing, is stuff we've done before. And then sometimes it looks more like I've come to see other people perform a story, right? And so I think we're open, and it could be something more communal, like a creative dinner, a really engaged creative civic conversation that that somehow is comes out of this process, and it doesn't look like a play at all. There's not really particularly performative. It could be a lot of different things, right? Depending on where the play and the conversation with the community naturally evolves. But we do imagine that there will be an outcome to the process as opposed to a process that's sort of never ending. Unless I suppose the community really wanted to have a never-ending process, in which case we would just sort of try to put that perpetual motion machine into motion and kiss it up to the heavens. So anyway, it could be a lot of different things, but there is the idea of an outcome as opposed to, it's not sort of process for the sake of process in my mind at any rate, unless again that were to be what people wanted.
Yeah, there's just no predefined. And we very much are and process, like we said, each day is different. So that's what I said. The process is our art, because it isn't a separate thing.
Right.
It isn't like, today when we had, so for instance, we were up in Apache country, and we spent the day serving food at the evening we served food at a sobriety meeting, and the next day we spent the day winterizing elders' homes. That was the process. That is, I would argue, more important than the thing we finally did, the presentation of work we did at Indian School Park and at Salt River Community Community.
And the stories that were shared during that time, and the interactions and the sort of how people were sparked by the idea that we were there with the idea of doing a play, which was people like, what? We're like, and just all those, that sort of constellation of experience and constellation of connections that happened through that are hugely important parts of the process. And the little and big creative moments that happen during the peak can really be spectacularly beautiful in ways that have been sort of instigated by the process, and those all form the ultimate thing that we've made, or thing that has been made in communal practice and interaction for 2 or 3 years.
I think what's hard sometimes, especially with funders or producing organizations, is understanding like that, we had a transformative experience with one young woman in a basement in South Dakota, which sounds horrible, but it was a basement of school. And it was a transformative experience that we still talk about all these years later.
We do.
That's one human we saw that day and spoke to, but it had a lasting effect on us and our process and the outcome, the artistic outcome for years, and continues to. Telling a funder, we talked to one person today. We flew all the way to South Dakota and talked to one person. It sounds like failure in the metrics of how we define success in funding and research and whatever. Where we have a day where we meet we have 3 meetings and 50 people come to all of them, and there's all these folks, and we do a talk and all these things happen. That looks like a successful day, but we may not have gotten nothing important artistically because we didn't have the time and the ability to really have the kind of human interaction we need to create work together and understand what people really want. Maybe we did, but sometimes we didn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't guarantee, numbers don't guarantee more success, but that's how this world is set up. So the process of being with this young woman in a basement for hours and hours and hours, she never stopped talking, was huge, and it had such an effect on our lives and our artwork ultimately, and also how we work. And we realized there are things we had to adjust in our protocols of how we work, and just so many things were learned from that day. But I'd say to 99% of academic and institutional metrics, that was a failure day. It's money spent to what? So it's one human. Is that enough?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think about that, and I think like this idea about like narrative reparations, right, and fostering narrative relations is like the most important thing. If we are living in a story right now, we can tell the story of this day and share it with others. There's a type of quality of that, because theater itself is an ephemeral art. It's like, you do the show and it's gone. But I think, like, to answer your question about process in particular, it's like you don't, like, the process is, whatever aliveness comes that day, like the weather. You don't know, what the weather's going to be unless you're in, I guess, here in Arizona, it's going to be sun, but it might be cloudy, right? So, like, given that idea, I think there's something about staying alive in the moments to like radically give yourself to others, and so that with the hopes that they also may show up and give back. And so there's this exchange that happens in terms of story, and whatever comes out of it, like you don't know, like, and I think that's the unknown factor, like the mystery of it. Something wonderful and amazing is going to come out of it, right? Just like if you like bake a cake or make food or plant seeds, something may happen when you put time and intentionality and ritual into it, and all these really good ingredients. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's so important to this idea about valuing the interpersonal stories that seem to like matter so much, like years later, not even talking about the show, you're talking about like meeting, like inspiring young people and inspiring people that might not know a world different from their own. And that's what's like, that's humanity, right? That's the humanities. I get excited about it.
Well, I think so much of our work too is about common. It sounds silly in the world, but we talk a lot about not having, you can't have an ego. You have to be able to put aside your ego. And, it's like when I show up at community, I may just spend all my time, on cooking or because child minding or something, things that maybe I personally as a human I don't feel really called to, but that's what in that community, that's the role that I'm seen to be doing. I'm walking me holding babies, and like it's just not my thing. But there I was in a kitchen with women holding babies because that's in that community, that's what needed to be done, not to be a playwright, not to be any other thing that I might want to call myself. Or even on the other side, we were just telling him yesterday about when he and I were in Fiji on this grant, and we got to the University of the South Pacific, and the person who invited us was gone, and didn't tell anybody we're coming, and here we are. Anyway, and so we just like, what do you want us to, we're here to share work with you or whatever. And like, they wanted me to teach them Balanchine ballet classes specifically, because these were, performers who are incredibly gifted dancers, and they sometimes get trips to the United States, and they want to take a ballet class where they don't know the protocols of how class works and what the formality of, they just don't know. And so like literally it's like, oh, okay, well here's what happens in the dressing room, and here's what happens when you sign in, and we went through all that, and then I taught them a Balanchine class. And like the last thing in my life I expected to be doing in Fiji was teaching Balanchine ballet classes. Like that was to people who don't have ballet shoes on these like scary wood floors that you're saying that have openings in them, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna rip it off. Like it was not what I would have thought I would go to Fiji to do with Indigenous people, but that's what the community needed, and that's what they wanted, and so that's what I did. which fortunately, was of interest to them.
Yeah.
But if it had been of interest to them to have me sweep out the dressing rooms, then that's what I would have done. My dear Michael has spent much time cleaning out, one time notoriously cleaning a lot of rat poop off of risers so the children would be healthy and safe on the risers. He spent a day, massive masks on doing simply, but that's the work that needed to be done so the children could be safe and healthy. So that's what he did. It's really, and that was being of incredible service to that community and to the art that community was creating that day. And so it could be, if you start out, good morning, Brenna.